nitrogen's black, the starter's black, and it's all black because we're adding humic to it. And once you add humic, you can't see nothing. It's that fluid is black. So this year we installed, if you see here, there's little propulsion devices, rotors in here, and there's a stream coming up through here, and it's turning that. Each one of these are individual. One of these, this is the starter system, and this is going to the rear. So these are electronically hooked to a monitoring system in the cab, and it will show me the exact gallons per acre per row. That way I can see, and you can watch them. They're just, you know, sitting there. This is our first year for this. It worked until it didn't. We had two problems. There's a jet here, and this jet has to spray this turbine. Well, they had a little filter under here on each of them, and our humic, it's the nature of humics. Okay, now you can buy some really cheap humics. Well, they're not necessarily always cheap, but they're watered down. And I don't know if, let me ask this question first. Do you guys have any humics? Do you use them at all?
We have them, but we don't use a lot of them now.
Okay. Well, a thicker humic or one that hasn't been extremely watered down, just the nature of the beast is, will have a little bit of grit and stuff to it. After a while, we start plugging these little filters here. So I had to remove those, but I left the jet in, it still works. We got that working again, and then we had a harnessing issue where it wasn't communicating properly, but we got that fixed. So anyway, that was first year kind of, you know, problems. But as far as the way it works and the accuracy of it and the way to monitor what I'm doing, I really do like that. I think that's going to be real good for us.
Not to look
That's
across the
kinda how we
fence.
keep track.
We do trials here.
When I get around the back, I'll show you a little bit more about how this thing varies its rate. But okay, so let's.
How many pounds of pay are you putting on?
Well, the
With the plant?
the P is only like say 5 gallon of, let's say, a 624.6 or whatever that equates to. It's not a lot of P, right? Our goal with that starter is basically what it says, is to get it started. It's not going to carry it through, but especially with my, you know, some of this lower CC ground, it just needs that little extra bit to get going, you know. The main load of the fertility is, you know, either been applied through chicken litter or some dry fertilizer, but anymore we're predominantly chicken litter, which no one else around here does either. We have to go 100 miles to get it, and it's a pain in the ass, you know. 2 ton of the acre. Well, a thicker humic or one that hasn't been extremely watered down, just the nature of the beast is, will have a little bit of grit and stuff to it. After a while, we start plugging these little filters here. So I had to remove those, but I left the jet in, it still works. We got that working again, and then we had a harnessing issue where it wasn't communicating properly, but we got that fixed. So anyway, that was first year kind of, you know, problems. But as far as the way it works and the accuracy of it and the way to monitor what I'm doing, I really do like that. I think that's going to be real good for us. So that's kind of how we keep track of it. When I get around the back, I'll show you. Leo, like I have been around the back, I'll show you a little bit more about how this thing varies its rate. But okay, so let's.
How many pounds of pay are you putting on?
Well,
With the plant?
the P is only like say 5 gallon of, let's say, a 624.6 or whatever that equates to. It's not a lot of P, right? Our goal with that starter is basically what it says, is to get it started. It's not going to carry it through, but especially with my, you know, some of this lower CC ground, it just needs that little extra bit to get going, you know. The main load of the fertility is, you know, either been applied through chicken litter or some dry fertilizer, but anymore we're predominantly chicken litter, which no one else around here does either. We have to go 100 miles to get it, and it's a pain in the ass, you know. Great, but okay, so let's.
How many pounds of pay are you putting on?
Well,
With the plant?
the P is only like say 5 gallon of, let's say, a 624.6 or whatever that equates to. It's not a lot of P, right? our goal with that starter is basically what it says, is to get it started. It's not going to carry it through, but especially with my, some of this lower CC ground, it just needs that little extra bit to get going. The main load of the fertility is, either been applied through chicken litter or some dry fertilizer, but anymore we're predominantly chicken litter, which no one else around here does either. We have to go 100 miles to get it, and it's a pain in the ass. 2 ton to the acre of chicken litter on a couple thousand acres, that's a job in itself. That's why that floater's sitting there.
Doing that annually, the chicken manure?
Yeah, we're doing it annually, yeah. So just the trucking and everything else along with it, right?
Yeah.
But we are seeing our, if you figure pounds for pounds, it's this way with any manure. We use a little cattle manure too. If you're putting dry fertilizers out and they're, it's your, I don't know, I suppose your guys have 0060 potassium chloride, right? And a MAP or a DAP,
Yeah,
what's
52, whatever it is.
MAP?
Yeah, Matt.
Yeah, okay.
That's our main source, yeah.
And then potash is potassium chloride and 0060?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, okay. Now here we do also have available potassium sulfate. It's double to 2.5 times the money. If I got to run with potassium dry, I'll really try, and we did this year, to go towards that. Reason is it's much more available. Potassium chloride, if you actually, I would challenge you to, when you get home or sometime, to sit down and read up on potassium chloride and the amount that's actually available, to the plant.
Our soils are quite high in
you-
potassium where we are.
Yeah. Your soils are high. Well,
Yeah,
good,
and
good,
we still put manure on, so we sort of
good.
putting the chicken manure on that. We're getting
Do you know like what your base saturations are? Well, that'd be a different kind of, a base saturation like I are sometime, to sit down and read up on potassium chloride and the amount that's actually available, to the plant.
our soils are quite high in
you-
potassium where we are.
Yeah. Your soils are high. Well,
Yeah,
good,
but- and
good,
We still put manure on, so we sort of
good.
putting the chicken manure on that. We're getting
Do you know like what your base saturations are? Well, that'd be a different kind of, a base saturation like would be called a percent. Yeah, like here, a good percentage is 4 to 8%. Couldn't tell you. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, we can get back to all that, but we'll keep talking about the planter here. So let's roll around the back of it here. Available.
we're getting
Do you know like what your base percentage is? 4 to 8. I guess probably should, start at the front of a unit and just talk about, and I'm sure none of this is new to you guys, but I'm just going to kind of go through it, the row cleaners, very northern Illinois, our climate's way different than you guys. We go to winter here. When we're done picking, lots of times we get done picking in the snow, right? And it's freezing. We try to beat that, but not always. And our springs are, there can almost be snow in the fence row, that sun hasn't got to, and we're planting. We have to really crowd that window. We're in northern Illinois, and if you look, you've been across the U.S., right? Texas is a long way south from us, right? We're getting upper in the Corn Belt. There's some up into Wisconsin. You get about halfway through Wisconsin, it pretty well ends. Now they do go up in Minnesota and Michigan. There's some good areas up in there, but their seasons are shorter, like ours are. So trash control is important for us. And that's why around here there's a lot of just straight tillage. There's some no-till. There isn't a horrible amount. I do a percentage. Most of my no-till is on ground that is rocky. I don't want to take a tillage piece of equipment in there. I love no-till, but sometimes wetter ground, it's really hard to get it to dry out. Strip till, like it sounds like you guys do a fair amount of, is a great option. I've done a little of it. I like that. I wouldn't be against doing it on all acres. The only thing with what we're doing right now with all the chicken litter is I kind of like to get it worked in, especially the stuff we're using. there's always people around. I mean, we're houses and sometimes we're next to town. It stinks like hell, you know, and if you can get it worked in and keep people a little bit happier, it's advantageous, because some people aren't very happy when we spread that. But strip till is a great option. You know, it's in between no-till and tillage, and I have a lot of faith in that. So our tillage, you know, will either, that thing we've been using in the spring and fall, hit it in the fall on stalks, and then come back in the spring. We've just been doing that a couple years. It works on most acres, not all. It's great in sand. It'll chew the shit out of stalks and sand. Some of the heavier ground, we're still doing a little deep ripping. I don't know if you'd want to use that 10 years in a row. I think we'd probably get you know, maybe a compaction layer in there. We're still going to come in and out, I think, deep ripping probably.
Using corn stubbles, are you? Or?
Yeah. Bean ground, the only thing we do with bean ground, following the combine almost, we run a drill and cover crop it.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll put rye and oats in.
Yep.
The oats for us will kill in winter, and we'll get a little bit of rye through, and that's our standard program. And we'll either no-till into that, or sometimes I let it get about that big and we till it in with that thing. Now you want to grow some pretty good corn, do that, because you're putting all that green matter, what we call here green manure, in. So anyway, trash is where I started this whole thing. So trash wheels are no-brainer in our area. You got to have them pretty much. I used to have the Precisions with their air cylinder. That's probably a little better than this system. You could control them a little more intricately, but these work just fine. But Precision's probably got them beat on that. Next thing, I guess, the hydraulic downforce. That's a no-brainer anymore around here. Planting every seed the same depth in no-till. I don't care if you're no-till, ridge-till, or tilled. You're always going to run variances within a field. And I don't know if you guys have hydraulic. Let me ask that question. Are we using that over there, or predominantly, or? Yeah, good. Okay. So I mean, you understand the concept. I don't need to go real deep into that. But that's definitely, and this is a high-speed planter. You got to have it with a high-speed planter too. Otherwise, that.
What speed are you running?
They're designed to run, 10. I hardly ever go 10. There's guys that do. I don't have that many acres I got to go that fast. My fields aren't that big, to where, it's hard to run that fast. We have some rocks. Hit a rock at 10 mile an hour, it's a little harder on stuff. So I run 7 and 8 a lot. With the old planter, I ran 5. In my contest stuff, 3.5. This one I probably run 5 in a contest, and most of the ground 7 and 8 probably. It takes a tremendous amount of power with a speed planter. Also, you start increasing your speed, you really got to have some horsepower, especially if you got hills. Your stuff's probably all flat, I'm guessing. Yeah, don't have to worry about that. Okay. So a plant unit is a plant unit, right? I mean, I don't know what brand of equipment are we using over there. Are they Horsch? Yeah. And Deere's with Precision, and the harvest bars. Harvest bars are great. Probably they beat these. I bought one of them. Their unit is better than a Deere's, but I had to go with all Precision if I was going to go. This. The reason I switched from Precision to Deere was I was having enough trouble with the technology of Precision stuff. Load cells, the iPad talking to the Gen 3 and rebooting and having to, get an upload and this and that. And the Deere stuff, they have way less trouble with that. I was getting frustrated with it. So, and these Precision ain't gonna like this, these will plant more accurately than a Precision ESET will. The difference is the brush meter in these. They have a belt. The high speed has a belt. These have the brush, not meter, the brush belt. That belt holds that seed right to the ground. It comes in, it drops it right there. The belt, if you've ever seen the simulations, belt do a good job, but they'll be just a tad erratic on release. So that's why these will beat those on actual placement. Now, when it gets right down to yield, if one's a tad off and the other one's perfect on a percentage, probably not a lot of difference, right? I mean, it's pretty close. But these will do a little better job as far as placement. The closing system, probably the most important thing on a planter. I mean, I guess I shouldn't narrow it down to that, but it probably is, because that will make and break you. I had Precision furrow closer, furrow force, yes. That in no-till, that is without a doubt the best closing system on the market, still is. That will close in wet, anything, that will close. And it leaves, and it will take the sidewalk compaction, and it will alleviate that if you're dealing with that. In tilled ground, I didn't particularly like it, and I have a fair amount of tilled ground. You had to run it really low pressures to keep it not to trying to dig in or rooster tail. It didn't firm real well on real loose ground. You kind of want a firm seed bed. So that would have been my view. Precision beats them in no-till. There's a multitude of systems that work well in tilled ground, a multitude of them. This was a new system for me, and the reason I went this way, this is on no other planters. The fertilizer delivery part. A lot of people have different versions of this, but this was designed for me by Martin Manufacturing this year, and they'll probably market it next year. You've got this isn't really what I call a spike closing wheel. The spikes, I'm talking the spikes that drive down in. This is just, it's still a spike, but it's more of a wedge spike. So
That's obviously cast, not
this is cast. This is cast. Yeah, and the reason I go with cast is rocks. Also, these holes will allow, if a corner of a rock comes up between here, sometimes a corner will let it eject then. The old style, your rubber closing wheels, your normal ones like John Deere Standard, right? I'll get a rock wedge right here, a fist-sized rock all time. And and then you're dragging a trench and you can't see it, that was a real problem. So I have to consider that when I'm considering a closing system. Now, when getting down to the fertilizer, we'll talk about this first. So before I was using Conceal, right, which is part of the gauge wheel. It's, you got a slit here, and that knife is right down there. Does anybody have it here using it?
Nah.
Okay. A bandit, yeah, okay. Same kind of thing. Like I said, the right idea, it's placing it down there in the ground, not real deep. But the wheel itself has flaws. Under extreme pressure, the wheel would fail occasionally. With that gap here, if you get in a wet condition, you plug it. I had a couple times I had the whole planter plugged, and you do that about twice and you get pretty upset. Where these, obviously it's not going to plug in here, right? But, and the first thing you say, well, why are you going through that? Well, everybody's got a wet spot occasionally, half the planter goes through, and you should have quit around sooner, but you didn't. So anyway, and in no-till sometimes we get those kind of scenarios. So I didn't want that. The Conceal knife, very expensive, wore out fairly fast, and it's hidden down in here. And that's where the outlet of the fertilizer is, right down here. And that's where it would plug. You got that little outlet, and we're all time taking we have the orange flags you get, to mark with, right? We keep plenty of them around to unplug those tubes all the time. Gets frustrating after a while, and you're full of fertilizer while you're doing it, and so I've always been at the belief, no, it's better if you can get phosphorus in the ground, but that nitrogen, as long as you have rainfall or irrigation, the nitrogen and the sulfur and the other things we're using will rein in at no issue whatsoever. Now, if you'd go 3 weeks and that laid on top, I would have said, maybe that wasn't the best option. But with our humics that we're putting with it, we'll stabilize, or sometimes we'll use some other stuff. We'll help stabilize that nitrogen even if it is on top. But generally here in northern Illinois, we're fighting to get the crop in between rains. Usually, I mean, that's always, we got a couple days and there's another rain. And, you know, we get 3 days and there's another rain. So usually that gets rained in. The way it looks to us this year is that worked real well. I unplugged on this whole planter. I unplugged. Tim helped me with it. It was one in-furrow one time, I think, out in the field. Besides that, we never had a plug. My other planter was plugged all daily.
Do all the sowing, Dan? That's probably a pretty important part of it.
Do I do all the planting? Yeah. The corn. David helps me with the beans. Yeah. I'm pretty particular with this. There's a lot of, not that he couldn't do it, but there's a lot of technology in here. You got to learn it all, right? I used to do all the spraying. David does it all now, and I can start and move that thing, but that's all I can do with that, you know, because I don't know the technology in it. You got to know all that, and you guys know as farmers, if you're using it once a year, it's a real pain in the ass to try to remember every step of every piece of equipment, right? You know, you forget half of it. So I keep a lot of notes and, you know, everything for all that. But anyway, so I was real happy with this. We are just, you can see where we're delivering here, right? That's going to get rained down. And they talk about, you know, your starter, right? Well, you guys have all dug small corn plants, right? So that starter's that initial burst. I mean, like right away. And they say, well, this don't get there till, you know, V3, V4. Bullshit. If it's in the ground and you've had water, you know, if that's been rained in, you can dig you ever notice a seedling is rooting out farther than the sprout's going, you know? And within a week old, it's got roots. I mean, if you really want to dig, they're out that far already. So this fertility can get to that plant soon, even though it's on top and that far out, you know. In the U.S., they call it like either a 2x2x2 system, a 3x3x3, but a 3x3x3 is 3 inches in the ground, or 2x2x2 is 2 inches in the ground. I'd be I don't know, what you call it, 3x0 by something, 3, I guess, you know, is what you call this. So anyway, this is a very simple system, and I think it was the right choice for me. Maybe not for everybody, but for me it was the right choice. What's that? There's another thing we changed when I was pulling the tank, right? We'd be 25 gallon, 30 gallon. Now I'm more in that 15 because I have less capacity. I want to stay a little lighter. We've made that up in another application. You know, it didn't like the crop has less, and I think I'm coming to believe that's probably a little better anyway. When you throw all that nitrogen that close to the plant that early, we've always had trouble with corn getting too big, being lush with nitrogen. This year it never rained, so I mean we had a little rain at planting, but then we went 6 weeks with nothing. So all the corn in this area is short. The irrigated is still shorter than it would normally be, but the dry land stuff is, you know, some of it's only that big, and normally it's bigger than that.
So you trying to slow your nitrogen uptake?
Well, I'm trying not to give it maybe as much, you know, because we're going to be giving it now. You know, this year we've done it different ways. You know, with our chemicals we spray some out, so there's some there. I mean, that's available for early in the plant's life. This year we use some urea and then a protected type of urea they call ESN. I don't know if they have it over there or not. So we dry spread some of those, and then we Y drop in for that later. So we're spoon feeding a lot of different trips with night, and a lot of different forms as far as that go, of nitrogen. But we're not. What's that?
You pull some soil cores to work out what's there, or you just?
Nah, I just mostly because I kind of done enough of it in the past. I kind of got an idea to know. Not that that ain't a bad idea, but lots of times by you get that information, you half-ass miss the window. You know, so what we've done is over the past with tissues and those kind of things is kind of know what happens, and we kind of design a program for that. So, like I said, that's, you know, a 15 gallon now. I don't know what it's like in your area, but something else we're putting in this band is calcium. Calcium's a big thing. It's, you know, it's a big crop nutrient. our calcium magnesium ratios, I don't know if you get into all that, but they're in this area they're horrible. They're like 2 to 1, calcium to magnesium. They should be 5 to 1, 7 to 1. You know, I'm happy with 5 to 1. We've changed a lot of those through some applications of calcium or gypsum or sulfur, trying to drive the mag down. But still, we can't get our calcium numbers where some of the highest yielding guys are because they have calcitic soils. We don't have that. They have a high volume of calcium in the soil. Do you know what you guys have? Or?
Yeah.
Sim-
Like
We need to put a line.
Yeah.
3 to something, are they 3 to 6 is in there?
Just trying to think back.
The ratio?
It'd be roughly
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
2, 3 to 1.
2, 3 to 1.
So soils.
So, I mean, I don't know if you guys, but that might be something you want to look at. Get that calcium higher, get that mag down. You know, that's one of your first components. You know, like just like P and K, right? That's right at the beginning. You know, you kind of start with that before you even get into a lot of this kind of stuff. So, that's something you might want to take a look at. Where I was going with that was other things we're adding in. The humic, like I said, to help stabilize the nitrogen and buffer the salts. We try to stay away from salty fertilizers, but 32 is one of the saltiest, and ATS one of the saltiest damn things you can run into. But that's our program, and we choose that over anhydrous because anhydrous is death gas, kind of. You know, guys grow good corn on it, but I just don't like using it because it's hard on stuff. It's hard on your soil. So you got to figure out a way to buffer that. One's like with humics. The other is by not applying too much of it at one time, especially with us, because those salts, you know, can overload your soils. Especially if you guys are strip tilling and you're putting dry fertility down there, you got to really be aware of your salt load down there. I've known guys that were in kind of an organic environment, and then they tried strip tilling for the first time, and they were going to blow a good load of fertilizer and think they're going to have 500 bushel corn, and they had
7, 8.
it to where we were, but then we did something they didn't really want to do along with that. So we're combating that now, mainly with sulfur. Okay, which you need a lot. That's another thing. You need a lot of sulfur to grow corn. I don't know how much of it you guys use down there, but that's a big component also. The delivery system on this planter, you know, I'm sure you have your own brands, everything over there, but the nitrogen one is that Sure pump, where it says pump right, but it's a Surefire system ahead of that tank. It's that pump up there, and it has, being this is a speed planter, you know, whether you're going, you know, sometimes you're coming out at 3-4 mile an hour and then you just keep building up speed. Well, that's a big variance in your, you know, the amount of fertilizer that's coming out them tubes, right? So it's hard for, if you're just sized at one size line, it's really hard for that system to stay at a decent pressure. You're either too low or too high. So this particular system has like a switcher on it. If it's at a lower speed, it'll be going through, I think it's, you know, like the green line. And then it's like a splitter in there. You kick up to a little higher, you know, it's going to switch to the other line. If you're really hauling ass and you got a lot of fluid, turns both of them on. And it's changing that as you speed up, slowing down. That works. That does. It sounds complicated, but that works. So that's, my other planter didn't have that. I would start getting at some pretty high pressures and blowing some hoses off and things like that, you know, with that. The in-furrow system has its own pump. We'll talk a little bit about that. This one is also simpler. I've just got one single tube on my in-furrow system. The other one, we had the furrow jet where you had 3 bands. Again, plugging stuff. It worked, and it's probably the right way, but we just plug stuff too much. And I don't know if other people have as much trouble as we do, but we plug stuff a lot. So this, like I said, this system, we plug one line once on a fluke, and my life's quite a bit easier, and we're still delivering the products that we want to deliver there. So I think that's a good in between, you might say. Rootworm in our area, I don't know about your insect pressure.
No, we don't have it.
You don't have it.
Sounds like we don't want it either.
No, see, we are in a hot spot. We're in one of the worst spots in the country for rootworm, so that's a concern. My other planter actually had dry boxes on it. Probably the best way to do it. But we put, this one has a, I can do it two different ways. Those Force Evo is a pretty high-powered liquid system, and that,
What's the active there, Ben?
well, I don't know if I can even tell you the active. If you can see up there. If you want to take a picture of it, go ahead. It's upside down, but.
Yeah. No, don't reckon.
So we either use this is the higher price stuff, the better stuff. If we don't have as much pressure for in-furrow, we'll go with this bifenthrin at a fairly high rate that's just mixed in with the fertilizer. This one can't be mixed in with the fertilizer. That's why that dosatron is on there. This is tied to that. This is just all that's doing, that's a supply cabinet. That's all that is. The dosatron is a mechanical things. Do you guys have these over there? You seen these? Very simple, very cheap, very accurate way to supply into your line after the tank, after the pump, but before it hits, you know, before it hits each row unit. So those are a good thing. But if you don't have insect pressure, you know, it's kind of a moot point. But here it's a real problem for us.
Protection in the bag too, in your corn seed, yep.
A lot.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you're doing both.
Yeah, we have traits. We also if you want to take a picture of it, go ahead. It's upside down, but.
Yeah. No, don't reckon.
So we either use this is the higher price stuff, the better stuff. If we don't have as much pressure for in-furrow, we'll go with this bifenthrin at a fairly high rate that's just mixed in with the fertilizer. This one can't be mixed in with the fertilizer. That's why that dosatron is on there. This is tied to that. This is just all that's doing, that's a supply cabinet. That's all that is. The dosatron is a mechanical things. Do you guys have these over there? You seen these? Very simple, very cheap, very accurate way to supply into your line after the tank, after the pump, but before it hits, you know, before it hits each row unit. So those are a good thing. But if you don't have insect pressure, you know, it's kind of a moot point. But here it's a real problem for us.
Protection in the bag too, in your corn seed, yep.
A lot.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you're doing both.
Yeah, we have traits. We also have just the coatings and everything too. The traits are running out. Melissa's a seed.
So resistance, is it?
Yeah. What would you say on the? Are the? You know, the basically the traits are around here. They're almost not useful, aren't they?
You guys have used it year after year after year after year, and so therefore.
Let's grab some more from there.
But you're doing both.
Used it year after year.
So resistance, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What? Shouldn't take very long.
everybody's having a great night. Welcome to the edit sesh. You get the inside scoop. It's free for now, but may not always be free. Well, that shouldn't have taken that long. There it is.
Insects are becoming resistant to the proteins, and so there needs to be other ways of controlling.
Useful, aren't they?
Guys have used it year after year after year after year, and so therefore the insects are becoming resistant to the proteins, and so there needs to be other ways of controlling, which he does above ground insecticide.
Yep.
And
During-
such as that.
Why is
Like
the pressure
itself.
so bad around here?
What's that?
Why is the pressure so bad in this area?
Why is it?
So there's
Must be the
hot
weather.
spots of corn on corn on corn on corn, and actually they have become resistant to the proteins, and so year after year after year after year, and so therefore the insects are becoming resistant to the proteins, and so there needs to be other ways of controlling, which he does above ground insecticide.
Yep.
And
During-
such as that.
Why is
Like
the pressure
itself.
so bad around here?
What's that?
Why is the pressure so bad in this area?
Why is it?
So there's
Must be the
hot
weather.
spots of corn on corn on corn on corn, and actually they have become resistant to the proteins, and so they're even in the soybeans. And they come from the south and they work their way north, and so we've got northern, we've got western, but hot spots. We have hot spots, and it's not consistent year to year. So it's really kind of a hit and miss.
An
but-
interesting thing is we had this year on one farm. We had two varieties side by side, and
A hit and miss.
an
but-
interesting thing is we had this year on one farm. We had two varieties side by side, and we noticed. Well, Melissa seen it first, because she was out in the corn, and then I drove by, and you could see the top of the field by driving by on the road. And 24 rows were, because the planter was split, had one variety in half and half. And one variety looked burnt on the top, like you'd sprayed it with nitrogen or something, you know. She went out in there, and it was rootworm feeding. It was that bad. I mean, they were eating the leaves off to where they were dead on top.
As the leaves were unfurling, they
Yeah.
were eating as fast as they were unfurling, and it looked like they were burnt on the top, like it had been something.
The one variety, the other variety they left alone. Now, have you ever? Does this make any sense with an insect? You got row and row where right at the split, right? They're here and they ain't here. That's with an insect that flies.
Which made it double on the one variety.
Yeah.
Made it double the pressure.
The consensus is they see infrared. I don't know. The darker greener plant, they went towards.
Which made it double on the one variety.
Yeah.
Made it double the pressure. And
The consensus is they see.
which made it double on the one variety. Made it double the pressure. And
The consensus is they see infrared. The consensus is they see infrared. I don't know. The darker greener plant, they went towards that, and maybe that one tasted better. I don't know. But the consensus is they see infrared. I don't know. The darker greener plant, they went towards that, and maybe that one tasted. the darker greener plant, they went towards that, and maybe that one tasted better. I don't know. But that was right before silking. Now, that pressure's high enough at silking, them suckers mow them right off. You're done, right? So we had to time that very critically, right at or just as the silks were coming out to nail them. Oh, there's now gnaw them right off. Yeah, they're gone. Then you're done. You ain't pollinating that ear. They take them all. Yeah, yeah.
Let's touch on the Japanese beetles that used to show up the last 2 weeks of June and be gone by the second week in July.
Are they the big, they're the big
today.
Yeah,
are they?
yeah. You've probably seen them.
So we have delayed the hatches, or maybe we killed all the early ones, and the later ones are becoming more of the parents. We've now stretched that window into 8 or 10 weeks when it used to be 6.
Just by, like you said, just by our other applications probably, Brad, and stretching it out. Yeah. So insects are definitely a problem for us. You don't have any insects?
Yeah, we have like
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, right.
Rootworm
Yeah.
beetles clip
Yeah.
silk.
Do they?
Oh, there's no gnaw them right
Yeah.
off. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
right.
gone. Then you're done. You ain't pollinating that ear.
That's what
They take 'em all.
Rootworm
Yeah.
beetles clip
Yeah.
silks.
Yeah,
Rootworm
Yeah.
beetles clip
Yeah.
silks.
yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Let's touch on the Japanese beetles that used to show up the last 2 weeks of June and be gone by the second week in July.
Are they
I
the
still
big,
have
they're the
them
big
today.
suckers, are they?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've probably seen them.
So we have delayed the hatches, or maybe we killed all the early ones. So we have delayed the hatches, or maybe we killed all the early ones, and the later ones are becoming more of the parents. We've now stretched that window into 8 or 10 weeks when it used to be 6.
Just by, like you said, just by our other applications probably, Brad, and stretching it out. Yeah. So insects are definitely a problem for us. You don't have any insects?
Yeah, we have like a root type of that. Yep. Not much pressure.
Not much,
A
so.
lot more Midgera.
Okay.
So, Lepidoptera and
Okay,
the what do you call them, corn earworms. We get those.
Okay, yeah.
Same as Texas.
yeah.
Mites are another one for us.
What?
Spider mites we get.
Spider mites, yes. We also have spider mites, yep. Okay.
Only in the dry years and mostly on the lighter.
Oops.
Yeah.
Worm, which is a root worm.
A root type of that. Yeah.
Not much pressure.
Not
A
much.
lot more Midgera.
Okay.
So Lepidoptera and
Okay.
the what do you call them, corn earworms. We get those.
Okay. Yeah.
Same as Texas.
Yeah.
Above ground insects.
Mites are another one for us.
What?
Spider mites we get.
Spider mites, yes. We also have spider mites, yep. Okay.
Only in the dry years and
Mostly on the lighter ground do we have spider mites.
Yeah.
That tells you a little bit about yourself. Mostly on the lighter ground do we have spider mites.
Yeah.
That tells Mostly on the lighter ground do we have spider mites.
Yeah.
That tells you a little bit about your soil.
That's, I don't know, I think I've covered a lot of it on this planner. As far as, like I said, what we're, our in-furrow, what we're putting in there is what I said, like either 318-18 or 624-6, a little sugar, a little humic, a phosphorus releaser, and possibly some some other things. Boron, I know you guys are probably going to ask about boron. I used to apply boron with the planter, not in furrow. You know, you're not supposed to do that. But I applied it in my 2x2 or 3x3. A quarter pound of actual product, which is, you know, you got to divide that out to what your product was. And I would show very high tissue analysis with that quarter pound. But I've come to believe that little corn plant doesn't need boron. I don't really think you're doing it much good then. And I don't know, it could have even been hurting it, I'm not sure. But we have played and put like a lot of granulbore and turned some corn white, you know. I mean, it's definitely toxic, you know. Now we're more trying to spoon feed that. We do use granulbore in the spring. Granulbore is a crystal, a boron crystal that's a little bigger and a little odd shaped. It will kind of melt and rain down over time, just like some of these slower release fertilizers that you've run across of. So with that, we've been able to seem to maintain some tissue samples more like where I want to see. But then we're also adding a little in with our Y drop, that's pre-pollination, which is a little bigger time needed for boron, right? Than I think than a very small plant.
That's the time where there's a small amount in our pop-up, what we call pop-up or a starter.
Yeah.
And yeah, bugger all though.
Yeah.
It's probably a feel-good thing like you just said.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we're using more like targeted applications.
Later. Yeah.
You know, closer to, you know,
Yeah.
BT, things like that, yeah.
A little in with our Y drop, that's pre-pollination, which is a little bigger time needed for boron, right? Than I think than a very small plant.
That's the time where there's a small amount. That's the time where there's a small amount in our pop-up, what we call pop-up or a starter.
Yeah.
And yeah, bugger all though.
Yeah.
It's probably a feel-good thing like you just said.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we're using more like targeted applications.
Later. Yeah.
You know, closer to, you know, yeah,
Yeah.
BT, things like that, yeah.
Okay, so and then through our main components, like I said before, is a 28005. This year we're using some calcium nitrate, humics. Anything else, Melissa? Well, we have used kelp, but that's usually in furrow, yeah. And some yucca we're starting to use a little bit more and more. That's one of Brad's things. You know, like I said, he travels all over, and yucca is I like to say it's from I say it's from a cactus plant, but what's it really from? It's a cactus plant?
Basically what it is, and not very much domestic production.
It's cactus.
Basically what
Ooh, a little much there. A little
Basically what it is, and not very much domestic production, so you have to have permission to go out in the desert, and you can only take so many leaves off of.
So we were using it for stress
Certain age
medication when it was so
plants.
dry. We treated some this year.
Yeah, right, so it has a hormone response, is that what it's
Yes.
doing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So we were using it for stress
age
medication when it was so
plants.
dry. We treated some this year.
Yeah, right, so it has a hormone response, is that what it's
Yes.
doing?
Yeah.
And a little bit of a nitrogen stabilization leaves off of.
So we were using it for stress medication when it was so dry. We treated some this year.
Yeah, right, so it has a hormone response, is that what it's
Yes.
doing?
Yeah.
And a little bit of a nitrogen stabilization to it, because they'll use it in dry feed to mitigate some of the ammonia released out of livestock feed.
And it also acts as surfactant.
To mitigate some of the ammonia released out of livestock feed.
And it also acts as surfactant, too.
We have yuccas, yeah. Big spot.
Yeah. Well, there you go. You better start you a yucca business. Yeah. It's actually pretty good stuff, I think, from what we're. It's a surfactant, too.
We have yuccas, yeah. Big spot.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
You got yucca in Australia. Big shout out to Australia for coming to visit Dan.
Yuccas, yeah.
Yeah.
Big spot.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
it,
there you go. You better start your.
Yuccas, yeah.
Yeah.
Big spot.
Yeah. Well, there you go. You better start you a yucca. A yucca.
Yuccas, yeah. We have yuccas, yeah.
Yeah.
Big spot.
Yeah. Well, there you go. You better start you a yucca business. Yeah. It's actually pretty good stuff, I think, from what we're seeing with it. A lot of companies. Yeah. Fairly reasonable.
Which
Lot.
company do you get it off, sorry?
There's 2 or 3 companies here. I use Desert King.
Yeah, that's a wrap. Shut her down. Shut her down.
Wait for them to go to Old Mexico and give me a pallet made. They had 2.5 2 by 2.5. They had 5 or 6 of those around, but I had to wait till they went back to the factory to get pallet again.
And only at planning, is that the... Yeah.
Fairly reasonable.
Which
Lot.
company do you get it off, sorry?
There's 2 or 3 companies here. I use Desert King. Desert King right now is in a supply pinch. So I'm looking for somebody else. I had to wait for them to go to Old Mexico and get me a pallet made. They had 2.5, 2 by 2.5s. They had 5 or 6 of those around, but I had to wait till they went back to the factory to get a pallet again.
And only at planning, is that the only time you're putting it on? Or?
No, we were using it with that spray application for medication, to stress medication. Corey, I think, has it in a different product, yeah. But it's the same kind of product, yeah. Yeah, this is a pure yucca product that we're using. The Dosatron, in the Dosatron we're using the Force Evo, which is a Syngenta product, and that's working real well for us. So that's a good setup. Actually,